ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Drafted Pages podcast. Pretty fun, special episode here today. Got my dad and my sister here, and we're going to talk about the Phillies. Talk about, some of our favorite players, how the season's unfolding, our expectations, and so on and so forth. It's kind of got that red October feeling going on right now, especially the way they've been playing. A lot of good things. So to get the ball rolling, I asked you guys to come up with your two favorite Phillies players that you've seen play in your lifetime. And before we get into those two players, honorable mentions each. Just a name, didn't make that top two, just another name out there. Dad, we'll start with you. Who's your honorable mention?
My honorable mention is a guy that most people don't think of as a Philly. You usually think of him as a Red, but it's Pete Rose.
Pete Rose. It's a classic MLB phenomenon. Should be in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he saved our 1980 World Series when Bob Boone dropped that foul ball and he caught it.
Yeah. So. It's a good one. Lexi, honorable mention?
I was telling Nick this before the podcast. I've stuck with the past couple years as team because I was way too young to really remember anybody. My honorable mention is going to Casti.
Casti. Okay.
Yeah.
My honorable mention's Shane Victorino.
He's good.
Flying Hawaiian.
Yeah.
He's good.
Yeah.
Good
So,
pick.
Dad, who are your top two? You can talk about them a little bit, just both of them. Your top two favorite Phillies players that you've seen play in your life.
So my favorite Philly of all time that I've seen play is Steve Carlton. Have to go with a pitcher. And if you know anything about baseball or pitchers, you know lefty. Okay. He when he retired, he was the strikeout king for left-handed pitchers. Multiple Cy Young winner. And the 1972 season, the Phillies won 59 games, and Steve Carlton won 27 of them. Okay. I don't think you're ever going to see that in baseball ever again.
It's kind of unheard of nowadays.
So he's my favorite, and my second is I'm going to go a little newer, but Chase Utley. Just love the way he played the game. Absolutely, just down and dirty, hard nosed. Just gave everything he had when he was on the field every time. So those would be my top two.
Good choices. I don't think you'll get any criticism from anybody on those top two right there. Yeah, definitely a lot of respect for them. Legends in the bank. So
Yeah. Utley was my first Philly love.
he was your first jersey, right? Utley?
Yeah.
The red Utley jersey.
That's when I really felt like I started to get into the Phillies culture. I was maybe 10 years old. Oh well.
But
That was
Lexi, your top two favorites.
This is so hard. I feel like unlike Mr. Baseball over here, I'm gonna get a lot of maybe criticism for my choices. I went Real Muto. I love catchers. I think he's one of the best catchers in baseball, obviously, and just to watch him kind of work behind the plate to make some of those throws to second that are just so clean cut, and there's just no miss, no error, no fuss. He's on top of everything. I'm watching him for his defensive skills. He's gotta do some work in the cages, I think. Just a bit would be nice. And then my second choice, I'm going Stott. I really love watching his at-bats, especially. I can be sitting at a game and it can be an 0-2 count. 17 pitches later, he's walking. It's insane to just watch his patience and how relaxed he is at the plate. There's no worry. There's nothing going on in his brain. He's like, I'll hit the pitch that I like, and he fouls till no end, fighting for that full count. I just like to watch the other pitcher just slowly lose his soul on number 18. Dude.
Yeah, I think Stott has probably, I haven't looked it up, but I think he probably has more QABs than anybody on the team.
Yeah.
He really works the pitchers.
You could say everything's A-okay in his mind.
Everything is A-okay in his mind. Oh my goodness. Getting hype again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are great picks too. I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of recency bias there, but JT's an absolute unit behind the plate.
Yeah.
A little bit struggles offensively this year, but I mean, he's one of the best defensive catchers in baseball, still a leader, still expecting big things out of him in the postseason. I know he's got your heart there. Before I get into mine, do you think you like catchers that way because you grew up watching me catch a lot?
Probably.
You think that's a little bit of an influence?
I feel like there's always that bias because I was just, growing up as your little sister getting into baseball, like once you understand kind of how hard it is to field a lot of the pitches that you get, and like having dad constantly like lean over to me and be like, now what your brother just did, very hard, very difficult, let me tell you why. Like hearing all that, I used to just roll my eyes, but then you start to understand it, and I'd watch you work and practice and just kind of developed like a love for just like that position. I think it's sometimes one of the most overlooked positions in baseball because it's easy to just keep your eyes focused on the pitcher, but I think the catcher has a lot of work to do in terms of leadership and kind of collecting everybody. So yeah, I think I do have some bias there, but I still love him.
Yeah. So good choices. And I think Stott really found his groove in the postseason last year, right? Yeah. We were all saying that his ABs, he was never out of it. No. Kind of really found his groove and has taken that through into this season. So it's really cool to see him produce the way he has this year. Hardworking guy. So for my two, I was going to go Utley for kind of the same reasons that you said in there, but I'll switch it to a different guy. My top two are Harper and Holiday.
He's good too.
Well, I mean, Roy Halladay, Hall of Famer. One of the best pitchers of all time. Just watching him pitch, you knew every single time the Phillies had a chance to win, right? Mm-hmm. Especially in that postseason, you get 2 runs, the game might be over with him on the mound. It happened a lot. I think back to the last game he pitched in the postseason was against the Giants or the Cardinals, it may have been, and we lost like 1-0 or something like that, and he pitched a complete game, gave up 1 run, and we just couldn't score one, right? That's how good he was, absolutely dominant. So he was a blast to watch on the mound. And then Harper, what can't you say about Harper? The guy is a superstar through and through, on and off the field. Super entertaining every single time, not to mention the energy and passion he has for the game. I equate it a lot to Ovechkin in hockey, the way Ovechkin celebrates every goal he scores like it's the first goal he's ever scored. And especially in the postseason, like Harper gets the same way on every hit, every play. Like he plays with so much emotion behind it, and it's so good for the game of baseball, but it's also just electrifying to watch. So those are my two. Like I said, I think we all had good picks here, different reasons across the board, but there's a lot to be hopeful for with the Phillies roster into the future here. Coming off a World Series berth last year, didn't go the way we wanted, but kind of a Cinderella run and kind of showed the potential that this team had, and its young core, young pieces there. I think they did a good job adding in some places that they needed help, getting another starter in Walker, improving some of the bullpen, picking up Lorenzo now at the trade deadline. Now that the dust is settled and the pieces are kind of in place, Phillies look like they're going to be one of the 3 wild card teams, right? And barring a catastrophic collapse or either from them or from the Braves to move into the divisional spot, right? Not going to happen. But
that's cute pipe dream.
What are your guys' thoughts right now, post trade deadline? We'll start there. Dad, we'll start with you. Do you think the Phillies should have done more, knowing their core, knowing the window that they kind of have right now, the next, like, I don't know, you want to ballpark it 5 years, to really make true runs at a World Series before they kind of have to start retooling and adding more players as Harper, Turner, Schwarber, Costi, all of them kind of age out?
Never.
Do you think they should have added more? Do you think they made the right moves? Do you think they just need the veterans to start to play like they've been paid to play?
So let's start at the beginning. I don't think they could have done much more than they did at the trade deadline. I think getting Lorenzen was a great pick. They needed help in pitching. We've said that over the last few years. The offense has been great. The defense is great, but where's the pitching? Where's the pitching? Where's the pitching has let us down. Last year we got it. It all came together when it needed to. This year, Aaron Nola's struggling a little bit. He's not. He's always been a guy. He's either going to strike you out or give up a home run. Okay, that's the way he is. But he's just not himself this year, at least so far. He's been worse more often than the good Aaron Nola. So I think getting Lorenzen was a great pickup. He's a guy that can fill a multitude of roles, especially come postseason, because he can be your starter, can be, whatever number you need him to be as a starter, or if you need him out of the bullpen, he can come out of the bullpen. He's done both. So I think that's a great pickup. I don't think they need to do anything with the rest of the team. I think the team is, I don't know where you can improve the team. You look around, Bohm at third, Turner at short, Stott at second, and, whomever at first, okay, whether it's Harper, whether it's Cave because Harper's DH, and to me it's kind of irrelevant, okay? And then you look at the outfield, when Marsh comes back healthy, Schwarber's a liability defensively, okay? We all know that. And we saw that against Baltimore. Schwarber, I know you want his bat in the game, but if it's late in the game, you got to lead, you got to get him out of there. Yep. You got to put somebody else in, especially now. Rojas has come on to show that he's a major leaguer. Okay, there's no doubt about it. He can play at the MLB level. So you've got him in it. You got Casty. You got guys that can play. I don't think you need to do anything with the team. And now tonight, Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally so insane.
So I don't think you really need to do anything with the team. I'll do a hockey analogy. Tampa Bay Lightning. You ride these guys into the sunset. Tampa Bay got, 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, won 2 cups. They're not by any stretch. You can't discount them this year. You're not, they're not a favorite, but get to the playoffs.
Anything can happen.
Right. I ain't counting them out. And I think that's where the Phillies are right now. Most of their schedule, the bulk of their schedule is against teams that aren't in the playoffs. So their destiny is in their own hands. Win the games you need to win, and you're going to make the playoffs. And it doesn't matter if you win the division. We saw that last year. Okay, winning the division's great. Okay, you get a little extra rest. Okay, but sometimes a little extra rest, as we've seen in multiple sports, comes back and bites you in the butt because the other teams have been playing or in a groove, and you've been waiting.
Especially baseball, when seeing live pitching and then taking a few days off. It's nice to get your legs back, but you miss seeing the ball and tracking that, and it can have a true effect on you. And we saw that last year with the postseason, and I think it'll probably happen again to some degree, right? Some of those early seeds that have that rest will probably come out flat. Like you said, just get to the dance and be ready to go.
And then before I turn it over to Lex, I'll just say one last thing. We were there. We were watching the postseason. San Diego's got to be kicking themselves for pitching to Harper. Walk Harper, put him on first and say, who cares? Yeah. Make the next guy beat you, but not pitching to that guy.
Yeah.
And I've seen it multiple times in the MLB where the manager does this stupid thing where we got to play traditional baseball. We don't want to put the tying run or winning run on second base. So we're going to pitch to the guy who's going to hit it out of the ballpark instead of pitching to the next guy. And that guy always hits it out of the park.
Yep.
And you end up losing anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Hi.
Lexi, thoughts post-trade deadline?
Post-trade deadline. Well, I agree. I think Lorenzen was a really great pick. We've always talked about bullpen depth, I think, is where we struggle. Our guys can hit. We know that. There's been some struggles this year for sure, but I've always been of the opinion it doesn't really matter if we can put up 7 runs if we're just going to give up 7 runs throughout the inning anyway. So I was really happy with that pick. Castro, I don't really understand it so much. It's fine. I'm sort of indifferent.
It's a depth move.
And I understand that, but I think my question was, he's primarily another infielder. I just that whole lineup that they have right now, to me, just didn't really need the depth. I would have actually, before Wilson, okay, everything's before Wilson, would have probably opted to try to get more outfielding depth just to have that variety and kind of work a stronger bat in the lineup. Castro really hasn't been putting up mind-boggling numbers per se, so I think that's kind of where the hesitancy came from me. understand depth, but I would have liked to have at least a stronger batter if you're going to sign somebody. But I'm kind of the opinion with Dad. I think right now I want this team to remain as untouched as possible. I selfishly say that because I love the players that we have now. I love this culture that's kind of being created in. But I also think as much as it's important for the team, it's also important for the fans. I mean, I used to think it was so ridiculous when people would say like, oh yeah, you should go to like the bank and see what happens when we all stand to our feet and kind of collectively come together. But I mean, look at what we've seen time and time again. We could be down, by 8 runs and, the bank rallies and stands to their feet and suddenly we're up on top 12-8. Like there's just something that really does happen within this stadium and within your fan base. I mean, we just saw it with Trey Turner, right? One game where we're standing, giving standing ovation saying, hey, we got your back. And he's essentially back on top. We support this fan base like no other, and we are absolutely loyal to a fault sometimes. So I want to see these guys win a series, at least one, if not as many as they can, muster up together. And I think, a huge part of that will be trying to retain a lot of your core members for as long as possible, even if that does mean in a weird way like sacrificing on some pitching depth. It does mean sacrificing on maybe signing a stronger outfielder here and there, but I think sometimes those sacrifices are worth it to keep the integrity and the culture that you've invested in with this team. And I think, like you were saying earlier about Bryce Harper, he is, for all intents and purposes, a lot of heart and soul of this team. It's not like he's going anywhere anytime soon, but I think, the kind of culture that this team has right now, I think once that starts to dissolve, so does everything else. And I think it's much harder to build that environment where you can be down 5 runs and still have people's heads in the game versus we've seen with other teams that are down, 6 runs and you don't feel it, you don't see it, you don't sense it within the teammates, how they look at each other in the dugout when celebrations happen. I just don't find that culture within any other team. So I think we have a good shot at running again. I'm never going to say never with this team. Braves can be the Braves, but as we've all said, none of it matters if you lose the last game of the season, which they did. So they can have the division. I don't really care. I'd rather have the title. So.
Well said. Well said. And I think what you touched on there is the culture aspect, and I think the Phillies have really done a great job of building that. They brought in winners, people who have been there, done that, Schwarber, Turner. They brought in other people who've had a lot of success, like Coste, like Harper, like JT, right? Individual success and seeking that championship and are hungry and are all kind of in their primes, right?
Yeah.
And they're here for at least a couple more years, right? We have Schwarber, Coste, Harper, Turner, JT, all locked up. Bohm, Stott, Marsh are under our control through arbitration over the next few years. Biggest thing is just going to be pitching, right, moving forward. And we can get into that a little bit later. But just kind of looking forward, right? Looking forward to the playoffs and kind of our expectations, right? If it ends today, Phillies are in a wild card position. They're probably hosting the Giants, right, for a 3-game series. Do you guys think that there's higher expectations now on this team based on what they did last year and kind of what is expected of them going into this year, right? And do you think that has an effect on them going to the postseason this time around rather than last year when they just barely scraped in and everybody was writing them off from day one and they just kind of rode that underdog mentality all the way through the World Series and just came up a little bit short against the best team in baseball, which was the Astros last year. So nothing to hang your hat on, right? But how do you think that plays into this year, Lexi? You can
I'll take this one
take
first.
the first one, yeah.
I mean, I don't think they're necessarily feeling as, everybody's doubting us. I think a lot of people, especially given last year, can now see the potential that our team has, especially with the past few games, seeing them, rally together and get on top and start hitting the ball consistently. But I do think there's actually a strong number of people that are still kind of writing it off as a fluke, per se. Like, they'll look at people, some of the teams we played, and it's the criticism of why pitch to Harper. Like, that was a dumb move. Like, it comes up to people saying that it was mismanagement of all the teams that we played against. You know, I think there's some concessions with the talents and the way we hit the ball, but I think there is still some of that criticism there. So I still think there's that humbling of we're the underdogs, we're going to have to do it again. But given how far they went last year, we were not supposed to be there. Like, it's just there was no reason for us to be there, and I think that's what made it so exciting, and that's what made it, you know, it sucked to lose. It sucked even more to lose to the Astros, but I think that's kind of what the beauty in it was, is like we did make it. Like, that was impressive, and I think what I at least hope for is that it doesn't put any more pressure on this team, but it gives them the confidence that they need to be like, we were here, like, when we didn't even think we should be or, like, had a leg to be in. Now we know, like, we made it all the way once. Like, we're going to make this time count. And I really do think if we get to the World Series again, there is no second place for us. Like, we are going all the way and we are catching that title, because I don't think this team is looking at any other option right now. I think they are of the mentality of it's game after game, win after win, and we're going to just keep doing that until the season's over. So I have a lot of high hopes. There's always a little nerves, but my confidence outweighs my nerves by far. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what happens and just have to wait and see, I suppose.
Yeah. Dad?
So I think there is a tremendous amount of pressure on this team after last year. I think it showed at the beginning of the season. The fans were disgruntled. They were angry. They were booing them at the park. And, you know, Philadelphia's always been a blue-collar, lunch pail, hardworking mentality. And not to say that the players weren't trying. Okay? I hate when people say that, okay? Because they are. It's not like they're not trying, okay? It's just they were not playing well. Top to bottom, pitching, hitting, they were terrible coming out of the gate. They got so far behind Atlanta again. You know, and the division was pretty much over. So now you're battling for a wild card, and they were struggling. You know, they were behind in that.
They're behind Miami and the Mets for a large part of the season.
Okay, and the fans were not happy about that, because the expectation going into this season was we're going to win we're going to the playoffs, and we're going to get to the World Series and win it. I mean, that's anything short of that is going to feel like a major disappointment to this team. I think the wild card stuff is the thing that scares me the most, because a 3-game series is, you know, it's tough. Everything has to work right in a 3-game series. Okay. And the other thing that I question at this point is, and I hate to say this because he pushed most of the right buttons last year, but is Thompson smoking crack this year? I mean, it's like the moves he's making and when he's making them and the moves he's not making, they make zero sense. Like, the guy has completely lost his managerial mind compared to what he did last year. Okay, now, I don't think it would have taken a lot for the Phillies to beat the Astros last year. The Astros, you know, I hate the people who say, you know, oh, they're cheaters, they're cheaters. The Astros did something that every major league team has done for centuries. They just took it to a level nobody had taken it and got caught.
No, and they were arrogant about it. That's why we hate them. They're smug. Right.
So, you know, stealing signs has been going on for as long as baseball has been played. Okay, so even if you know the pitch is coming and you've played baseball, you know, knowing what the pitch is a help, but you still have to hit it. And the Astros did it. Okay, and they got the pitching that we didn't. And
last year there wasn't any of that. Right. They won the World Series last year, and they were the best team in baseball from the start of the season to the end. They were picked to win it, and they showed that having elite pitching and having depth there
goes a long way.
And I think it was John Smoltz who said it. We were all questioning it when he brought Alvarez in again. And Smoltz is like, this is I can't remember his exact words, but he was like, this is like the third or fourth time they've seen him.
Yeah.
This is not like during the regular season where you come in for 3 or 4 games. You might see this guy once, maybe twice. This is the 3rd or 4th time they've seen him. This is not a good move. But he was so hung up on that whole lefty, righty, right. No. Bring in somebody these guys haven't seen at that point because you needed an out there. Okay. And poof, there it went.
I mean, hindsight's
like I said,
always 2020.
Right. I don't think they were going to win the World Series anyway. But
I did.
You know,
a lot of us did, Dad.
That was just I would have been happy if they won, but the Astros were definitely a better team.
Yeah.
So
nobody's saying that, but you still like to think.
But this year the expectation. I'll say it. You know myself. If they don't make the World Series, I'm going to be terribly disappointed in this team.
I'm going to cry my eyes out.
No, I agree. I think the expectation is gets back to the World Series again and you know, get to the World Series or it's a failure, right? Like you said. I mean, baseball is so hard. There's so much parity, especially like you said, the wild cards, 3-game series, you know, one mistake, blunder, bad pitching change, an error, a poorly timed, you know, double play, right? Right. I mean, that can cost you a game, and then you're either down 1-0 or you blew the tiebreaker, right? The 1-1 series. So it can be very challenging in baseball. A lot has to go your way. There is some luck involved in the game, but that's the beauty of it, right? And I think the expectation is very high with this team. I think they brought in some bigger guns, like we said, to push them over the top this year, try and improve the weaknesses they had so they don't have to rely on just Alvarado and Sir Anthony out of the bullpen. They brought in some additional bats to help out with things and the strides that Bohm, Marsh, and Stott have all taken, right?
Huge.
I mean, as Kruk has said time and time again announcing games, where would we be without the youngsters this year?
Not here.
I don't think we would be in a competitive spot. We'd be fighting for that wild card spot, you know, or we'd look like the Mets, where we were supposed to be a World Series contending team and just didn't show up at all. Right. So I think it speaks a lot to the culture of the team. I think it speaks a lot to the management and believing in this team, the fans, right? I mean, players have talked about it. You hear it all the time. Until you go experience a playoff game at the bank, there's nothing like it. Red October, that fever is something else. It's really exciting to be a part of. But you kind of mentioned Tomper and his decisions and reflecting back on that decision to put in Alvarado there at the end. Hindsight's always 2020, right? And you and I, we're all talking about in the group chat, like, why is he putting in Alvarado here? Wheeler's been pitching pretty well. You know, like, this is his game. Let him get out of it, right? But then you also think of the way he managed the whole postseason. He didn't waver, right? Every single time it was time to go to the bull, time to get in Sir Anthony. I need a big out. I need that lefty. He went to them, and it came through, right? And you can say the luck kind of ran out there. Maybe it wasn't the smartest move. Maybe should have went against that status quo, but I do respect him for, like, sticking with that, right?
Yeah. Don't fix it if it ain't broke.
Right. So it's what got him there. He stuck with it. We'll see how he does this postseason. He's got a lot more to his arsenal, and just hopefully the bats continue to shine. He doesn't really have to worry about the bullpen as much.
Yeah, I just, you know, you have to. I mean, I've coached. You've been around it enough, and you had a taste of coaching. You have to manage the playoffs a little differently than you do the regular season because it's a narrower window. Okay, and you have a compressed timeline, if you will, of the events that are going to happen, and so you know sometimes you have to go against the grain, so to speak. And you made a great point. Wheeler was pitching great. His pitch count was low. He walked 2 guys, okay, or whatever was there, a hit or whatever. But he wasn't. They hadn't hit him hard. Nothing had been hit hard off him. You know. He's the guy you brought on this team for this moment, okay? If I'm there, I go out to him, and again, talk to JT. How's, what's he doing? How's he look? If JT says, there ain't nothing wrong here, you're my guy, get me out of this, okay? I'm not going to the bullpen yet, okay? The bullpen was tired. You have to manage. Sometimes I think they get caught up in, and we've talked about this with Charlie in the 2009 World Series. You get caught up in, I can't do this because there's the game tomorrow. Well, there is no game tomorrow if you don't win the game that you're in right now. Or as you put it in the 3-game, you can't lose game 1. You have to win game 1 in a 3-game series because your back's against the wall at that point. Okay, winning game 1 gives you a whole different mentality and what you can do in game 2, etc. But you have to manage to win that game. It doesn't matter how much you blow through your bullpen, how much you do. We've talked about it too. Was it the Cleveland Chicago? Is that where they went to their best pitcher early on? Yep. They look, this is game 7. There is no tomorrow. Okay, I'm taking my best guy and he's coming in now.
And that's why I think I liked, and a lot of people liked the way Thompson managed the playoffs last year. Yes. Like, you could tell from the get-go, from that first game, like he carried through the playoffs, especially since we were on the road for game 1 the whole way through. It was like, I'm winning this first game. I'm making the moves to Alvarado and Sir Anthony right away. I don't care if it's a tie game. I don't care if we're down 1. I'm making the moves. Right. I'm winning this game. And I'm not caring about the next game. I'm playing each game like it's game 7. There is no tomorrow, right?
Right. He did that right up until the Astros series, and then he changed a little bit.
Yeah,
he didn't,
a little bit, but I mean, it was a little bit of fatigue, a little bit mismanaged. You could, poor timing, whatever. Players just didn't perform. The Astros beat us, right?
Right.
But I mean, that's the beauty of baseball. So, I mean, Lexi, do you have any closing thoughts on this upcoming postseason, assuming the Phillies get in? Kind of like your thoughts, expectations, excitement, nervousness. You kind of touched on all of it right now.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I don't hate Nola as a
dad to buy tickets.
I would love that because I'm broke and I could probably not afford a game.
I mean, everybody would like dad to buy tickets to the games, right?
Comment if you want a ticket. Don't do that. Please don't do that. We don't. No.
We'll have a raffle.
Yeah. Just for us. Oh, you didn't get chosen. Darn. No. It's the hesitancy, and it's kind of like what you said. Rob Thompson's decision. Like, there was one earlier, I think it was Walker that was in, didn't even hit like 70 pitches and took him out of the game to put like Dominguez in, and then like we gave up a bunch of runs. I was like, what? It's decisions like that I just think create that hesitancy going into games where it really could, a decision like that really could backfire. And we don't know what was going on in his head, but he was like, I wanted to stay. Like, it didn't seem like he was tired. He wasn't pitching bad, but it's decisions like that. I think Aaron Nola's pants are way too tight. And I don't say that that's the reason why he pitches badly, but I would just encourage everybody to watch him on the mound. They just look very restricting, and like he doesn't get enough movement or flexibility. A little bit. Yeah. I don't understand what's going on. I think Rob Thompson is a scroll. I've started that conspiracy online. I am not ashamed of it. Something has switched. And ever since we've watched that show, that's all I can think about is that Rob Thompson is a scroll. It's the only way my mind can rationalize anything. I thought Trey Turner was a scroll for a while. I guess they released his body. I don't know. Okay, I think everybody's a scroll right now. So I'm a little tense. But I do have high hopes. I have high expectations. I think the pressure is certainly on. But I think it's like, we've all been saying, I think the mindset going into everything has to be like, this is it. This is the last game. This is the last chance that we get. And I think when we play like that, I mean, Bryce Harper has even said, like, there's something about being in an environment where it's a 3-2 count and you're down by, 3 and the bases are loaded. He just comes through. Like, there's something about feeling the pressure for a lot of these players on this team that allows them to hit the ball. I wish it wasn't that way. I would have liked for him to be like, we're up 8-0. Let me make it 9. It would be great. But that's not what they're doing. And there's still, I think up until a couple weeks ago, people were still saying that, until our key figures come through to hit, like, we're not going to be anywhere. And then you had people like Bohm and Stott, Marsh come through for us. And it's just, there's still, I think, that hint of doubt, like, is this the kind of team that can win a World Series? I still think there is a lot about them. Yeah.
So wild card, right?
Yeah.
Assuming that's where we are.
Oh, I'm stressed.
Who are your 3 starters and in which order?
I gotta think about that one.
Well, I think you have to go with whoever is the hot hand at that time. I mean, Lorenzen's had 2 phenomenal starts back to back. Okay, if he's my best pitcher going into the postseason, he's starting game 1. I'm going to Nola, and I'm talking to him first, and I'm going to let him know that sorry, but
I don't think Nola gets a start in a wild card game.
No.
so
I think you go Wheeler, Ranger, Lorenzen. Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah.
But I think
I mean,
I think you have to, like we've talked about, you have to win game 1. So whoever your best pitcher is going into that series, he gets the ball for game 1. And you talk to the team, and again, a lot of it all depends as well where you are going into the end of the season. Can you flip-flop guys and set the rotation the way you want it for that wild card game? Because if you can do that, if you have the cushion that it's not going to really matter, we can skip this start for this guy because I need him to pitch here, and because I want him to pitch. If you can do that and you can set it up the way you want it, you go 1, 2, 3. Your 3, whoever your 3 best guys are, and I'm not talking record. Record's got nothing to do with it. I'm talking about the guys who are pitching the best at that moment, because like we talked about earlier, seeing the ball and the groove that you're in, that's a big part of baseball. And I want the 3 best guys I got going 1, 2, 3, and I don't care who they are. I'm having a clubhouse meeting if I have to, and I'm telling the guys, look, you're all vital to the team. This is a short series. We're going with the 3 hottest hands. You other guys, you better be ready to come out of the pen, and don't tell me that I'm a starter. I'm not coming out of the pen. This is for all the marbles. If I need you out of the pen, you come out of the pen.
And they're professionals.
Yeah.
Right.
It's your job.
They
Right.
get to the stage where it's all about winning. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't think there would be any issue with that at all.
And in a 3-game set, I think that's, if I'm the manager, that's my mindset. I know I only need 3 starters tops, but I got 2 other starters sitting on the bench who are probably better than the guys coming out of the bullpen. So go get loose in the pen.
Yeah.
Go get loose.
Yeah.
Because I know it's a different mentality, but you may only have to pitch 2 or 3. You may only have to go through the order 1 time.
Yep.
If Wheeler goes 6 and I bring in Aaron Nola for 7, 8, 9, he only has to get through the lineup 1 time. He doesn't even have to turn the lineup over. If he goes 9 up, 9 down, we haven't seen Nola in forever, and now Nola comes in, and if he's got his good stuff, 9 up, 9 down is a real possibility.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I think it'll be exciting. I think we're all getting jittery, waiting for that time for the playoffs to get going. We'll probably run this episode back, assuming the Phillies make it, right, that there's no collapse here, but do a little wild card preview of whoever they're matched up against and have a better idea on things. So before we kind of get to the closing point here, I wanted to look a little bit ahead into the future with this team and get your guys' opinions on this. 2 parts. One is Aaron Nola. We've talked about him a lot and his struggles this year. In a contract year, usually professional athletes have some of their best years in a contract year because they want to get paid. They want to get that security. Nola certainly had his struggles this year, has been a pretty good pitcher by and large for the Phillies throughout his career. If you're the Dombrowski, what do you give him? What do you talk to? Obviously, there's going to be a conversation. Obviously, there's a lot to be done. But you're Dombrowski. Are you letting him go, or are you sitting him down? And what's your offer to him?
So it's funny you said that, because I was going to bring this up if you hadn't. It was one of the things I wanted to talk about. I read an article today. It's just a rumor. It has not been substantiated. But if it's true, I would do it in a heartbeat. They supposedly offered Nola 110 for 5. That's a steal. If Nola's going to take 110 for 5, 120. I'd get
22 a year for 5 more years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a done deal. If he'll take that, you can sign it today, baby. Here's your contract. You can have it today. But I do think,
and put that in perspective for you, Lexi. When we signed Wheeler, we signed him to a 5-year deal at 118.
Yeah.
So he's making 22 and a half this year and 23 and a half next year, and then he's a free agent.
So I think you have to. If you want to retain him, I think you have to go at least 5 years.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to sign for less than 5. And then it just becomes the number. And, we've talked about this a lot with the Phillies. They're not a cash-strapped team. If Nola wants more, the question is how much more? Okay, where. If you're the GM, you got to draw the line somewhere. Okay, but I think they get a deal done for Nola. I think he's a Philly.
Yeah, I mean, he's been there his whole career. He was here when, Howard was talking about it on the broadcast earlier today in the game. Like, Nola was there when Howard was kind of leaving and was there through all the turmoil.
Yeah.
Like another player we'll get to in a minute, but.
Well, Hamels was still here.
Yeah,
when Nola came in.
But Hamels was there for the success. Nola hadn't had any of that until last year, right? So, been there, done that. Lexi, what are your takes? You're Dombrowski. What's your decision?
I mean,
Granted, he could have a spectacular postseason, go on a run, and kind of change the whole contract talks, right?
Sure.
Right. But
I think
if he stays kind of the course, does okay in the postseason, we win, maybe not.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I think if we win, the numbers become a very different story, not just for him, but for a lot of other players.
Obviously.
But
especially if he has a Cole Hamels type
postseason run.
Yeah. Which honestly, I'm all here for as long as he's pitching well.
Let's do it, please.
Please, nobody's gonna stop you. Nobody's gonna take you out if you're gonna go on that type of run. But I'm kind of like with you. Like, I think I'd like to think that he'd sign something like 120 for 5. That's how it pans out. I think that is a steal. And I would also like to think, Nola's not oblivious. He knows that he has had shortcomings, that he does have this strikeout or homer kind of mantra burden that's been put on him. But I would also just love to see what happens. It's kind of looking, barring anything catastrophic, I'm scared to say this out loud, it's sort of looking like we are in the wild card, at least in the top spot. I would like to think if there's more security that happens over these next couple of games, people like Thompson do try the experiment where maybe you start someone like Lorenzen and you bring Nola in the 6th. I think like that. I think the pitcher mentality has to become like what a batter's mentality is at 3-2. Like, the pitcher's still going to pitch the ball and I'm still going to have to hit it. Like, the count shouldn't affect, it shouldn't add any layer of pressure, even though it does. And I think for Nola, him coming in at the 6th inning, it doesn't change the fact that you have to get on the mound and throw the ball. It's no different than throwing that first pitch. The pitch still has to make the plate. And I think just wrapping your head around that mentality, he might pitch even better. He might be more consistent coming in off the bullpen. Maybe he does better with that added layer of pressure. Like, I'm coming in to help out, not to kind of start off and then shack it off. Like, I'm getting pulled out when I gave up 3 runs, but I made it through 6 innings. Like, good for me. Like, I think that could also maybe help him a long way. I'd like to sign him if he would take something like that. If he wants more and we don't go all the way, it becomes a culture thing for me. I'd like to think that he would take it anyway, and money is secondary to wanting to win with your team. But if he's the type of guy that would want more money, I say you're better off letting him go and trying to pick someone up than trying to fight for somebody who doesn't want to be here all that much.
Yeah, I think they do everything they can to sign him. I don't see why you wouldn't. He hasn't had a great year. He gives up a good amount of homers. Hopefully they can correct that. But barring a catastrophic postseason run, and I haven't ever heard anything that he's a bad clubhouse guy.
Yeah.
Right. So, I would think they'd sign him. Right. He's a good starter. They need him. They need someone like him. He may not be the ace we envisioned him being when he was coming up, right? But you still need your 2, 3, 4 starters, right? Especially on a deep postseason team. So, hopefully he gets signed. The other big question mark, and unfortunately,
I don't want to talk about it.
This was going to be a huge conversation throughout the whole season just because of the team we have and how it's kind of shaping up. And now we've seen that, unfortunately, this guy might be expendable in Rhys Hoskins. He's kind of been the heart and soul of this team, much like Nola was there through all the struggles, was the bright spot for a long time, right? The guy you'd pay to go see play. And has certainly had his impact in a Phillies uniform. It would certainly be a shame to see him wear another jersey, but it certainly is a conversation. He probably won't play at all this year. He might pull a Kyle Schwarber if we make it all the way to the World Series and, come in for some ABs there and DH or pinch hit, and might have some crazy heroics yet again. But looking at this team, looking into the future, looking at first base, and kind of Lexi and I were talking about this earlier in our outfield, you got Costa, you got Schwarber. They're signed for a couple more years each. You've got Marsh, who's got to start. Rojas has proved he's an MLBer. Who knows what this Wilson guy is, making his debut tonight, looking pretty dang good. Harper's an outfielder. Yes, we've been using him a lot as a DH, but it'd be better for the overall team if Harper's in the outfield and Schwarber's the DH, right? But Harper's also shown he can play first. You got Bohm who can play first, and then that opens up a spot at third. Lots of possibilities, but again, poses the same question. You're Dombrowski. You assume Hoskins doesn't play at all this year. What do you do with him in this upcoming offseason?
I want to keep him. If I'm Dombrowski, even if he hasn't played a single game, I want to keep him. I want to have a long depth conversation about our needs, about where we're at, about what his future looks like, about what that money then looks like, about, how instrumental he is. I mean, even on the bench, he's rallying our players. To me, that's not just a write-off expendable, not for this team at least. I think when you have somebody that is so passionate, who is this heart and soul of this team, that, even not on the field, you still feel him there. You still feel the bat flip on the ground. That's not something you're going to be able to find in another player. So as crazy as it sounds, I think it does kind of call for some, lack of a better term, money ball shifting around positions, right? Mm-hmm. You got Harper at first. You want to try to keep him there. You switch him and Reese in a rotation. They're both strong hitters. All our players have become very strong hitters over the seasons. I think it looks like, Bowman, you're going to stay at third. Hey, Harper, you learned how to play first. How would you like to learn how to play third?
He's not going to play third.
He's not, but you also thought he might not even play first, right? So it's not closing any doors that with a team. I like to think Reese is the type of guy that you say, only spot we got for you is at third base. He's the type of guy that says, I'll pick up a glove and give it a shot. That's the type of mentality I think, or at least hope, that Reese has. And I'd like to keep him at all costs personally. I think he does a lot for this team emotionally, and when he has the bat in his hands and he's on his run, he does a lot of great work for us. And I'd really, really, really be devastated to see him go anywhere else. But it's a tough spot to be in right now. That injury, not a great thing to have in a contract year, but worse players have signed after an injury for a contract, but that's a podcast for a different time, I suppose.
So if I'm Dombrowski, I'm sitting Reese down and having a long conversation with him. Okay. I think from a Phillies perspective, not a Reese perspective, from a Phillies perspective, I think the best thing that happened to the Phillies was Reese blowing his knee out and being out for the season, because it opened up possibilities for the Phillies that didn't exist before that. Okay. Reese is a defensive liability. There's no, I mean, 30 MLB teams, whatever it is, and he's got to be in the bottom of, defensively.
Yes.
Okay. Now, to Lex's point, he is a great clubhouse guy. He's an emotional guy. The fans love him. I would love to keep him. But the question I'm asking him, does he want to take a lesser role on the team? Because he's not going to be our everyday first baseman anymore. Okay, it's just not going to happen, Reese. It's just not. You're not going out there every day. Whether it's Harper, whether they bring in somebody else, whether they, as you said, we move Bohm to first and we make it for another third baseman like we got Turner. I mean, there was all that talk early at the trade deadline, I don't know. I don't know. But he's not going to be my everyday first baseman anymore. Does he want to take a lesser role? Now, I don't even know if this is a possibility. Can he play the outfield? Has he ever played the outfield?
Yeah, he played left field for us before he played first. Before we got Schwarber and Goss.
So moving him into the outfield, then he goes into the outfield rotation, makes a lot more sense to me. But again,
he's still not your front run guy.
Right. Okay. You're not going to be the everyday guy anymore. It's just it's just the way it is. And then it becomes his decision. Does he say, thank you for your honesty, I'm going to go, look elsewhere, or I still want to be part of this team. Let's get a deal done. Everybody's a little different, but I think if I'm the GM, I'm having that conversation with him. And telling him that, look, I'm sorry you had the injury, but, we were probably going to end up where we are anyway.
Yep.
It is what it is.
It's just happening, now because of the injury. But we were going to end up in this place one way or another. Because for the team to do what it needs to do, you're not going to be the everyday guy anymore. And we'd love to have you. Like I said, the fans love him. He's a great clubhouse guy. He brings a lot of energy to the team. He's very passionate. All the things you love in a player. Mm-hmm. But I should have said this when we were talking about the playoffs. The young guys have been carrying a bulk of the load.
They've been carrying
to win the World Series, you need everybody to step up.
Yeah.
Okay, and especially your veteran players. You guys were all talking about Harper. Okay, Harper was the man last year.
He's not going to have the same type of run.
Right. I mean, he batted almost 500 for the postseason.
So insanely good.
That's a postseason for the ages. Okay, so you need the other guys to start picking up the pieces, and they have for the most part. Tonight Wilson did it. These young guys who are stepping in are doing it, and I think that there are decisions to be made with that whole first base scenario, and I don't have the answer, but the answer is not Rhys Hopkins as our long-term everyday first baseman. So I'm having that conversation with him.
Yeah, if I'm Dombrowski, I sit him down and I try to get another 1-year deal out of him. Kind of like you said, have an honest conversation. Be like, look, we don't know how you're going to perform. Mm-hmm. You might feel great. We really don't know until you get back out on that field and start playing again. Probably going to be some kind of rotation between, you at first and the outfielders and everybody we have, right? Schwarber, Coste, Rojas, Marsh, Harper, Hoskins. I mean, that's 5 or 6 guys right there. You can kind of rotate them through 5 games on, 1 game off. Just kind of do it like that, and maybe that's how it works out. Maybe that keeps everybody fresh and ready to go. But I think it really comes down to a business decision versus an emotional decision with Hoskins, and the things that he's done for this city and for this team, and especially last year's postseason. He had his struggles, but he certainly had his clutch moments that really helped this team, and some iconic moments, and it's hard emotionally to not take those into a contract talk, right? And do what's best for the team. So that's why we're here doing the podcast, and Dombrowski has to make all those big decisions. So
not envy that man's job.
It's going to be an interesting offseason no matter how it plays out. Yeah. It's going to be fun to see how it unfolds. The team's definitely set up well for the future with everybody coming on and performing, right? It's a good problem to have, right? I mean, we say it time and time again, it's good to have young guys coming up and playing and performing whatever sport it is, and make the decisions hard. Who do you keep? Who do you trade away? Who do you sign? Right?
They had to do it last year.
Yep, do it last year. I mean, we see it time and time again with hockey all the time, right? So, of course, winning makes everything a little bit easier. So that'll kind of lead me here to the last question. Real quick, Lexi, right now, everything you know, World Series win, yes or no?
Yes.
Dad, yes or no?
Can I hedge?
No.
Just yes or no.
No!
Gut instinct at this table right now.
No.
No.
I disown you.
I say yes. I think they run it back. They're heating up at the right time. I think they got all the pieces to do it, and I think they're coming with a vengeance this year, similar to other teams in the past who've come up short. So
I think the pressure gets to them.
yeah, I mean that's a fair take, and who knows how it's all going to play out this year. But like I said, we'll run this back. We'll do it again once the playoffs start. Assuming the Phillies get in, do a little wild card preview, and hopefully do a divisional series, championship series. And
I
World
would
Series
love
preview.
it. I would love to be wrong.
Yeah.
I would love to be wrong.
Hopefully we'll have a couple more of these come out. So with that'll kind of wrap up this week's episode. Really appreciate you guys listening to this special episode. Been a lot of fun. We got a lot of high expectations, high hopes for the Phillies. Hoping for some good things tonight. It's August 9th. If you're watching the game, you kind of know what's happening.
We're not going to say it.
But
If you're watching, you know.
Fingers crossed it all turns out. Either way, we're excited for the upcoming postseason. So check out the podcast, Draft Pages on all the platforms, and we'll see you next week.